Well, hello everyone, and welcome to chapter 12 of my video book on my YouTube channel, Gloria, the Story of a Woman. Today I'm going to take you kind of back to the first part of our marriage. My husband and I, we had my daughter, my beautiful, beautiful Sharon, and she was a little over a year old, and we lived in a duplex in Miami, Florida. And things were good. Everything was going good. I had a job at a doctor's office where 4 doctors were in there, and he worked at Sears as an air conditioning guy. And my little beautiful baby went to daycare over at the little white schoolhouse. And I think I told you this in the last chapter. You have to understand something. This was in like 1962. We had just, as I said, been renting. And I want to tell you this because this is extremely important for me to remember. But I was in the doctor's office and I was the bookkeeper, so I sit in the office in the back. We had Doris, the office manager, and Gloria, the insurance girl. We were all 3 back there. Well, for some reason that day they were, I guess, at lunch. We had a lunch room in there. A lady cooked our lunches for us, and they must have been there because I was back there by myself. But Doris had a little transistor radio that she had on. I don't know for what reason. Anyway, I'm sitting there posting on the machine, and all of a sudden I heard these words that changed American history pretty much forever, changed the people in America pretty much forever. And the words were, "We come now to tell you that the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, has been shot and killed in Dallas, Texas." What a blow. I had to listen to it another time. I heard it, tears streaming down my face, because you remember, this was the time of Camelot. John F. Kennedy was a vibrant, exciting president. Jackie Kennedy was the epitome of beauty and class, and it was just a wonderful time that we had been led to believe, of course. Now, another thing is, at that time, this was in 63, TVs had just come into the home, and only 90% of the people in the United States had TVs, and they were black and white. So this was something that was also extremely important because, and I'll go back to that in a minute, but I ran back to the office crying my heart out. Everybody thought something had happened to me or what, and I said, "The president has been assassinated." And I don't remember much the rest of the day. I do remember that the place where we lived was not very far from the office. And that day I chose to walk home. And I walked home, tears just streaming down my face, because this was not supposed to happen. This was the president of our country that had been murdered. So we get home, and of course, over the weekend, another important part of this was, for the first time in history, we were able to sit in and be front row center of everything going on. I was there when little John saluted his father's casket. I was there when Jackie Kennedy came out with a swollen, tear-stained face with the lace covering it, walking behind her husband's carriage with the horse-drawn carriage with the boots in the stirrups backwards. We were there. We sat on the front seat. We were actually there. And all weekend, we could not, no one, no traffic on the streets. Everyone was glued to their little TV sets. And not only that, but right after it, right on TV, us sitting there watching, Jack Ruby murders Lee Harvey Oswald in the police station, surrounded by police, being taken somewhere. Now, this is almost like a script written. I was also there, front row center, when Jackie Kennedy, when they showed the videos of John F. Kennedy literally being hit in the head, slumping over, and Jackie Kennedy trying to crawl off the back of the trunk of the car to get away from the horror that she had just experienced. I was there, front row center. We all were, when she gets on a plane and stands up and refuses to change her bright pink suit, blood-spattered suit, and says, "No, I want them to see what they have done." I was there when she stood up, when Lyndon Johnson was sworn in. And of course, it went on and on and on over and over, and I always felt in my heart that the Southern Coalition, the Southern people, Lyndon Johnson included, had something to do with Kennedy's assassination, because Kennedy was integrating the schools, and that was not going to happen if they could prevent it. It was absolutely not. So this, to me, was the first sign in the country about how big racism was in our country. And it was the tip of the iceberg that was opening up a Pandora's box that is still opening up today, believe it or not. And I was there. As I said, we were there sitting in front row center. That was over. We went back to our normal lives. We moved. We moved over to a little apartment by Lenny and Pat Plotzer. And Lenny and Pat Plotzer was kind of like us. Lenny was an alcoholic. He was a falling down alcoholic. Pat, she was a sweetheart. She didn't drink. She didn't smoke. She didn't do anything. She read. She loved to read. She had two daughters, Christy, which was a little Spitfire, and Brooke, a beautiful young girl who had a terrible, terrible accident. Her cousin, she was playing with her cousin out in the yard. He had a golf club, and he swung it and hit her in the side of her face and her eye, and just absolutely crushed the one side of her face. But anyway, I had David, my son, by that time. One of the reasons we moved was to get a bigger place. He was in a playpen. So Pat, who stayed home, said, I'll keep the kids, which was wonderful. We were in two little apartments on each side that was connected by two carports. Well, we didn't park in the carport. The kids all played in there. So we parked out in the driveway, and this gave the kids nice little place to play and out of the sun or whatever. And she also had an above the ground pool, which she took them in every day. So I decided, okay, it's too far to go to the doctor's office. I left there, and right not too far from where we lived, there was a bank. We only had one car, so we had to kind of juggle everything, even though eventually my husband got a Sears truck, which was wonderful. But I went and got a job in the bank, Second National Bank in North Miami. And I had already worked in a bank when I got out of high school in the bookkeeping department. So I went to work in the bookkeeping department in the bank, and then I worked my way up. And that's where the problems began. That's where my life kind of started taking a turn of going kind of downhill. Not right then, but later on. Now, Al Slabusky, who owned the bank, was a womanizer. He loved young women. Now, I wasn't a young woman. I was a married woman, but I had some looks. So he brought me out on the platform to open new accounts because he thought that would be good for business. Then he ordered uniforms for all of us to wear, all the girls to wear, blue and green. I'll never forget them. Hated those things. They were ugly. And the material was hot, and it was terrible. And the shorter, the better. I mean, he had us wear them short. So you better watch how you sit down and stood up and all of those things. But I endured it. It was part of the deal. So we went on and did what we had to do. And of course, he hired girls that were young and nice looking. And it was a time of craziness, because at that time, the pot industry from South America had started to come into Miami. And these guys, these guys who were like really redneck, were the ones bringing it in. And what they would do is they would come into Second National Bank with duffel bags and garbage cans full of cash. And we would go in the kitchen and count this money for these guys so that they could deposit it into the bank. That's when they changed the rules of depositing. You can't deposit more than $10,000 in cash because of the drug industry. They wanted to know where all that money was coming from. Anyway, we'd all go sit in the kitchen and count it. And when we finished, the guys that were depositing in, they'd throw each one of us like $1,000, $500, $1,000 on the table. Say thank you so much. Money was rolling. Second National Bank became wealthy. Al Slabusky became wealthy. And of course, people coming in, opening accounts. I think that was more like a little front. I'm not sure, but anyway, that is what was going on at that time. And that's when, once again, my slide down into the abyss really started in the bank. And I'll tell you how it started. Al Slabusky says, for every 1,000 accounts that you open for the week, you'll have a champagne party on Friday night, a catered champagne party. Now, the bar that was an account, they would literally bring in, just boxes of wine and drinks and glasses and food on a Friday night. Well, I was in charge of new accounts. So I got my people together and I said, listen, when you come in, here's what you do. If they have a lot of money to deposit, you want to get them to divide it up and deposit it in trust for their children. In other words, in opening one account, you don't open one account. If they got 3 kids, you open 3 accounts. In trust for, in trust for, in trust for. Because I knew about new accounts and how we could work this. Also, I was in charge of safety deposit boxes. So I said, we're all going to have them open a little safety deposit box. So by every Friday night, man, we had our 1,000 accounts and then some over. And by 4 o'clock, the bank closed from 4, I think, until 5, and then was open until 7. Well, at 4 o'clock, the bar started bringing the booze in, and they started setting up. Well, we were still open from 5 until 7, which was a long 5 until 7, but once those bank doors locked, it was mayhem. I'm telling you, it was mayhem. Now, I did not drink. I had not drank a drop. I didn't smoke a cigarette. I was a newbie. I was one that just had no idea what this was going to lead to in my life, that I was a full-fledged drug addict and alcoholic. And I was not a good one either. I could not get enough booze. I could not get enough drugs. I could not get enough pills. I could not get enough. I was like Scarface and with the cocaine. It just never enough. I started drinking cold duck. Now, for any of y'all that know anything about drinks, I don't even know if they make it anymore because I have not drank since 1982. But it was a potent, potent wine. And I got slammed on my face. I remember one night there came this loud banging on the door. And it was none other than my 6'3", 200-something pound husband looking for me. And I'm like back there in the back with all these people sloshed. My friend Nancy Reardon, who was the president's secretary, goes to the door and saves my life that night. But that was the first of many, many that I had started off down the road of my addiction and down the road of many years of pain and suffering and hurt and heartache and causing other people pain and suffering and heartache. And of course, my husband was already an alcoholic, so I fit right in with him. You know, 2 people that drink together, they don't stay together. If they do, it is a terrible, terrible relationship. So this was when all of this started. But the main thing is I have lived through a huge part of history in this country from like the 1950s on. And that's why I wanted to bring out to you about me living actually through and seeing all of the Kennedy assassination. And now what we're going to do is next week we're going to go in. And of course, as I said, the road to my addiction has begun. And that's just the bottom line. And the stories along the way are funny, they're painful, they are unreal to me, they're very vivid in my memory, and I'll never forget them because I don't want to forget them, because it keeps me clean and sober and say, Gloria, you will never go back into that part of your life again. one of the worst parts of my life. But it was a slow process. It happened in not even real time. The time was, it happened slowly. It crept up on me and I didn't even realize what was happening. But anyway, that's my story for today. And what I want y'all to do is hit that subscribe button. Come back next week for another great chapter, because once again, now it's getting good. Now the story is getting good. It's no more humdrum. And I will throw some history in there for you. I do promise that. But once again, hit the subscribe button. Come back. Tell your friends about me. They might learn something. Anyway, I love you guys. I'll see y'all next week. Mwah. Have a wonderful day.